Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope everyone's fine. Wa alaikum assalam. Mujtaba. And just gonna wait for some people to join and then we can start, inshallah. So, what we did last time is that we gave like an introduction to Imam Al Ghazali, and we did some aspects of his life. We talked about some of his ideas. And this time, inshallah, we're gonna start with Al Maqsad Al Asna and Imam Al Ghazali's commentary on the 99 names of God. We will start by an introduction, and after introducing the work, then what we can do is that we can dive into 5 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I've prepared. And what I've done is that I've written down summaries of them, and inshallah, while we are talking through them, what I would do is that I would explain more of them and what those summaries mean, some of the core ideas that Imam Al Ghazali is going to use in the book, the way that Imam Ghazali presents his ideas. And inshallah ta'ala, with that, we will get a good measure, and this will be beneficial for everyone if he understands how Imam Al Ghazali presents the name, and if he understands what his share of the names are. And we will also go through what share of the names means, because it seems very daunting, but it really isn't. And so, inshallah ta'ala, we're just going to wait for about 30 seconds. And then we're going to start, and people will join as we go through. Or perhaps we're going to wait a minute. And so, before we start, one of the things that should be known by Imam Al Ghazali is that he has a very occasionalist view, and we will continue to see it throughout the book. And we will also see that Imam Al Ghazali is a Sufi throughout, because so far we haven't encountered anything tasawwuf oriented from the Imam. But we will definitely encounter it throughout the reading of this book, and we will actually encounter it in the introduction itself. And so just gonna wait a couple of minutes, and just let me know, two of the guys who are watching right now, is my voice fine, is my audio fine? And so hopefully there's no issue in regards to that. Just give me, let's see, I'm just gonna wait for some people to join so we can start this. Okay, so let me just see. It sounds good, but if some noise of the wind or touching the microphone. Wind touching the microphone? Let's see, because I have like the heater on, perhaps that's the sound that you're hearing. And let me see. What we can do is that we can perhaps bring this a bit closer. And wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Some noise when you're touching the microphone. Well, there is some sound in the room, and it's probably of the heater. As long as it's not distracting, you can let me know. If it is, then I'll turn it off. So that's what I can do. Well, we're not going to start with questions, so we can have questions afterwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a presentation, and then we can have questions afterwards, inshallah. So I won't be entertaining any questions right now. Okay, so I guess we should probably begin then. All right, so yep. Let's place this in a place where. All right, so the names of God by Imam Abu Hamid Al Ghazali. Let me just see if everything is showing fine, and then we can begin, inshallah. Yep, it all seems to be working just fine. So let's start. Now, there are many discussions that have occurred previously on the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are many books that have been written on this before and after Imam Al Ghazali. Now, Imam Al Ghazali writes this primarily as a work due to someone asking him to write it. And this is Imam Al Ghazali's only work on the matter. And it's all encompassing work in the sense that he goes through each and every single one of the names and goes through pretty much all of the discussions that are in regards to the names of God. Now, what we're going to do over here is that we're going to go through 5 names, let's say a session. And so if you recall, we have 2 sessions, which is one session on Arba'in fi Usuluddin and one session on Al-Maqsad Al-Asna. So what we are going to do is we're going to alternate between the 2 books. And the reason for that is to keep it, let's say, more stimulating for you guys. And we're going to cover 5 names at a time. Now, this particular session will be a bit long because I will have to give an introduction and then cover the names. And this also relates to like the problem of evil. Imam Al Ghazali answers it when he talks about the names Al Rahman and Al Rahim. So what we're going to do is we're going to also cover Imam Al Ghazali's response to, let's say, a problem of power argument against God being merciful. And so this will be a bit longer than the sessions that I want to be, but it's good because we will have to go through an introduction of the book anyway. And so we will be able to, like, let's say, get it out of the way. So let us start then. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد. So this book is written in the later period of Imam Al Ghazali's life. So we don't know the exact date of when it was written, but we do know roundabouts when it was written. The reason being that it mentions Ihya Ulumuddin and it mentions Arba'in fi Usuluddin. And it is mentioned in Mishkat al-Anwar. So it is before Mishkat al-Anwar and it is after Ihya Ulumuddin and after Arba'in fi Usuluddin. So which places it in the later half of Imam Al-Ghazali's life, either when he returned to teaching or after he returned back to his home in Tus. But it is probably not after he returned back to his home in Tus in 1010, in 1110, but in the period between. So the name and the named, what this refers to is that Imam Al-Ghazali has a conversation inside of the book during its introduction, in which Imam Al-Ghazali, what he does is that he goes through, in essence, the entire concept of the name. So meaning the name that is ascribed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the named, and is it the same thing, the name being the same as the named, and the action of naming. Now, this is a bit complex, and so since I promised you guys that I will keep it basic, so I will not go through this and what Imam Al-Ghazali has to say on this, because it is, as I said, a bit complex. And so those of you who are interested in going into this and who do not mind the complexity, you can do it on your own accord. And if you have any questions, you can ask me in on Discord, right? Inshallah. So, but we will not go into it. Now, in terms of the reason that Imam Al-Ghazali wrote the book, our brother, as Imam Al-Ghazali doesn't name a person specifically in his book, but in the introduction he says that someone was asking him to write about the names of God, and due to his incentive, due to his asking Imam Al-Ghazali all of the time, what Imam Al-Ghazali did is that he did write a book on it. Now, the purpose of the book is so that man can attain a share in the meanings of the names of God. Now, what does that exactly mean and how does that manifest? So for Imam Al-Ghazali, there are 3 ways that a person can attain, let's say, a share in the meanings of the names of God. So the first is knowledge. Thereby a man, when he encounters the names of God and as he transcends, let's say, his understanding in the names of God, he is able to share in some of the knowledge in regards to them. What this does is that it promotes him towards perfection, it promotes him towards knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it promotes him towards attaining some capacity of the name, or the desire to attain some capacity of the name. So, and then the second purpose comes in adornment. So he wants to adorn himself with a sharing of the names of God, right? So he wants to be merciful, he wants to be powerful, he wants to be the king, he wants to be all of these different things by adorning himself with the meanings that these names supposedly give a person, right? So in that way, what he would do is that he would be able to remove the veils between him and God and gain a proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which leads us to our third reason for knowing these names and sharing in them. So a proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means that a person gains the rank of angels. So the angels are approximate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or let's say have a proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is called, let's say, a qurba in the Arabic language. It is not a proximity of space or time or anything of the sort. Actually, Imam Al Ghazali writes that he has to transcend these concepts, such as proximity in terms of space and time. So for example, when a person does a rational abstraction of something, he gains a proximity to that thing, but that proximity is abstract. It's not a proximity in space and time. So that is the meaning that is sought over here. For a person to gain proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by trying to embody the names of God. Now, the embodiment over here is not meant to say that a person is supposed to act as though he's God, astaghfirullah. The proximity over here is mean to say that a person is supposed to mimic the angels. So the angels do not have any pull of the world. So over here, what Imam Al Ghazali also does is that, and this it's apart from these 3 points, which is that Imam Al Ghazali talks about man and man's rank in, let's say, the pecking order. So there are 3 primary ranks that a person is supposed to know, which is that the rank of the angels, the rank of the beasts, and the rank of the man. Now 2 of these are very simple to understand, which is the rank of the beasts. So the beasts are the least of things, because they are living. So Imam Al Ghazali already assumes that he believes that non-living things are lower than living things. So, but the beast is lower than both the angels and the humans, because everything that it does is based upon space and time. So it smells something because it is near to it. It does not factor in anything beyond that, because the light of reason has not dawned upon it. And it is ruled by its desires. It is ruled purely by physical means, and it is ruled purely by his body. So the body wants to, let's say, have sexual intimacy, he has sexual intimacy. The body wants to eat, so he eats. The body wants to do any sort of, let's say, desire, so he indulges in it. This is why the beast is the lowest. And then the highest ranked is the angel. So the angel has no sense of space and time. So because the angel is not a jism like us, so it's probably immaterial. Because Imam Ghazali is very all over the place in regards to what but he probably does believe them to be immaterial substances, immaterial, let's say, particles, so to speak, in the Ashari atomist way, because that is what he says, that it's an immaterial substance, immaterial johar. So the angels are removed from these, the human, let's say, jism and physical movements. And so the angels have gained, let's say, a higher level of understanding without the need of either desires or without the need of a spatial temporal relation. So they know things and they have gained proximity to things without any sort of space-time continuum. But with the human being is the middle of these 2 things, because the human being is neither an angel, so he's not completely pure, and he's neither a beast in the sense that he has the ability to be pure. And so initially, when a human being is born, a human being is closer to the beast than he is to the angel, because when a human being is born, the only thing he realizes is space-time relation. So he touches something because it is near to him, and he has no recollection of something that is further away from him or something that he cannot perceive. And he's ruled by the desire, as children, children love to eat, and the reason that they love to eat is because one of the first desires that are born in them is the desire to eat, and so that's all they know. So this is why they dirty their faces, their clothes, and all of these different things. And so initially a man is closer to the beast, but as a man gains age and a man gains more wisdom, so to speak, the light of reason dawns upon him. So the first thing that occurs is that he gains the ability to discriminate, which is he gains the ability to measure things and make deductions and to be able to make differences between them, not purely based upon the senses. And the next thing that he gains is reasoning itself, where he can actually abstract universals from things and place them in their proper categories of necessary, possible, and impossible. And thereby he can abstract them and gain a proximity to them that is not based upon space and time. And after this, obviously, if he's a person who can advance further than that, then he would gain a proximity in the spiritual sense, not only in the abstraction sense. So this is in terms of the basic, let's say, introduction to it. But as you notice, there's something else over here, which is none knows God but God, and no one knows anything but God. So both of the statements do seem contradictory to each other, but they are not contradictory because both of them are true in one respect. So even though the way that Imam Al Ghazali tells you of sharing in the meanings, that may seem as though Imam Al Ghazali is saying that there's some sort of likeness between God and man, but that is obviously ridiculous. And so, therefore, he goes on to explain that, let us say that, and the way to make you understand this concept very easily is that, let us say we are explaining color to a blind man. And so the example that Imam Al Ghazali uses in the book is sexual intimacy, but I think that color and blindness is a bit of a better example. He also uses it in different areas. So I believe he uses it in Ihya Ulumuddin and Munqidh min ad-Dalal. But anyways, let's say you're trying to explain the color red to a blind man. The way that you would probably try to explain it is by giving him something that is closer to what he already perceives. So you might say that it's beautiful. You might say that it illuminates you. You might say all of these different things in order for a man to understand what the color red is. But if we were to really take these things on by themselves, they do not explain anything of what the color red is, right? Unless a person experiences it. So color red is not just illumination, right? It's a particular, well, you can't even describe it unless you've really experienced it, right? And nor is it just simply beautiful, because many things can be described with beauty, and it can also not be described with beauty, right? It's just a color red. So in order for you to bring let's say the meaning of the color red closer to the individual, what you do is that you give him the meanings that he already knows, which he can, let's say, make an approximation with, for you to then describe the color red through it. So that is in essence what the names of God are. They do not point to, so they do not reveal anything of who he truly is, but they are names that are told to us in order for us to gain an approximation of God. And our sharing, or let's say our sharing the names, is different per individual, because all of them embody different aspects, and all of them have different understandings of the name of God. And this is why nobody knows God but God himself. So the only thing that we have are approximations that have been given to us in order for us to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala better, without the names of God. And none knows him, because in order for a person to know him, he would have to, let's say, just as with the color red, he would have to attain the experience of the red itself. But none can attain the experience of being God, right? So none can know him at all. The closest that we can define Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in terms of negation. So this is also alluded in the Quran, that when Musa alayhi salam was asked about, what your Lord is by Pharaoh, Musa alayhi salam didn't describe what Allah is, he described what Allah does, right? Because in order to describe who Allah is, or like, let's say, the essence of God itself, it's impossible. Because the only thing you can do is that you can prove God is, and then you can prove what sort of things he must possess. And even in terms of those things, you can just negate about them. So for example, without knowledge, you would have to negate this knowledge like human beings, because it would impart in contingency and all of these different things. And there's also a very beautiful verse in the Quran that alludes to this, in which Isa alayhi salam is talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, did you tell your people that to take you and your mother as gods beside myself? And so Isa alayhi salam, after he gives his defense, he says that truly you know what is within me, but I do not know what is within you. So the ishara over here is that no one can know what's within Allah, meaning what is Allah in the proper sense, right? And so therefore no one knows God. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ said that you are as you have praised yourself, meaning I can't praise you. There's nothing for me to praise you with. You are as you have praised yourself, because it is only you who know who you are. But then comes the question, what about a person who says that that he knows nothing except God? This is also true. Perhaps it is even more true, so to speak, because he knows nothing apart from God's creation. He knows nothing apart from God's acts. He knows nothing apart from the order that God has created. It is like, for example, a man reading a book, right? And after reading the entire book, he says, I know nothing but the writer. Now, he is true in the respect that he knows nothing apart from what the writer has written. And he can make, let's say, deductions as to what the writer must possess in order to produce this work. And therefore, he knows nothing apart from the writer. And just like that, the entire world, everything that exists, is but the writing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the sense that it is an act of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, a man cannot know anything apart from God. It is actually impossible for him to know anything apart from God, because everything that he knows is an action of God. But in the same breath, it is impossible for him to know who God is in himself, right? Because he's the only true existent. And he cannot attain that experience because he cannot become God, astaghfirullah, right? And so he can never know that. And so this is basically what Imam Al Ghazali gives as, it's not an introduction, but this is what Imam Al Ghazali says right before he begins the discussion on the names. And so what we will do now is that we're going to go to 5 names that I've chosen for this video, inshallah ta'ala, and then we will go through them. So the first name is the name Allah. So Allah is the name that unites all the attributes of divinity and is a subject to all of the attributes of lordship. So what this means is that when you say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are combining all of the attributes of divinity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, and you're combining all of the attributes of lordship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. So this one name encompasses all of them. So you don't have to say, Allah is Al Malik. By saying Allah, everyone knows he's Al Malik, right? And so it combines all of the different names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into one name. So it is the most specific of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it cannot be applied to anyone apart from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And the reason for this is that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the necessary existent, in the sense that it is only He who is existent by virtue of Himself. Whereas everybody else, like me, you, this laptop in which I'm using to converse with you, all of these things are existent not by virtue of themselves. They are existent by virtue of Allah. So Allah has brought them into existence. Allah has given them existence. Allah has breathed existence into them, so to speak. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is existent only by virtue of Himself, right? So He's existent by His own essence. And so this is the name that points to the essence itself and to the necessary existent, the only true existent, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, it is the most specific of the names, because it cannot be attributed to anyone apart from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the counsel is that in order for man to share in this name, so share in some meaning of the name, it is for him to be completely absorbed by God, for him to pay no attention to anything other than Allah. For truly nothing other than Allah even exists, in the sense that nothing other than Allah has existence by virtue of itself, right? So when we say that something is existent, we are only using it metaphorically, because that thing does not have existence as an inherent quality of itself, right? It is Allah who brings him to existence from non-existence, and therefore existence can only be given to that which grants it, only be given to that which is existent by the virtue of itself, which is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so a man's share or man's understanding of this name can only be heightened when man removes everything apart from God, because the name points only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not to anything else, right? So other names of God, for example, can be said of human beings in some capacity. So for example, Allah is all powerful. A human being can be powerful, right? Allah is all merciful. A human being can be merciful, right? Allah is holy. A human being can be holy, right? And all of these different names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be given to human beings in a lesser capacity, right? So a human being can be powerful, he can be merciful, he can be holy, he can be the avenger, he can be all of these different names in some capacity, right? But nothing apart from Allah can be Allah, right? And so in order for you to understand this name, what you would have to do is that you would have to remove everything that is not Allah from your mind, from your actions, and from your contemplation, and only then would you would be able to understand the name Allah. So what Imam Al Ghazali then goes on to do is that he goes on to quote the famous Jahiliyyah poetry, in which the Prophet ﷺ said that no truer words have been spoken except by the poet Labid, in which he said, surely everything except Allah is in vain. This is also mentioned in the Quran. Everything will perish except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's face, right? So everything apart from Allah is perishing. It is non-existent in this sense, and it is irrelevant as to reality. And so therefore a person, when he removes his gaze from everything apart from God, he will be able to understand the name of God, which is Allah. That is his actual name, right? So it is more so like a proper noun. So some of the ulama have some differences on this. So what some of the ulama have said is that they have derived to, let's say, they have tried to derive some meaning from it. So some of them have said that, its actual meaning is who, which means he. So it does point to the essence, but that is what it means. So this is one of the opinions. But almost everyone agrees that it's a proper noun, meaning it's a name, right? Like a proper name. So like my name is Sultan. Some of you guys' name might be something else. So it's a proper name in that sense. So it's a name that can only be applied to God. It cannot be applied to anybody else, right? And so there have been some other, let's say, meanings that are supposed to be derived from the name. But Imam Al Ghazali says that they are all superficial and they are artificial, so to speak. So none of them, they're just speculations. In reality, no one knows what it means apart from it being the proper name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the name of him, just like I have my name as Sultan, right? So now what we're going to do is that we're going to partake in, we're going to explain two of the names simultaneously, because that is how Imam Al Ghazali does it. So he does it simultaneously. So we're going to start by the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is call upon Allah or call upon Al Rahman, whichever name you call. To him belong the best of names. So this is also mentioned in many of the commentaries on this verse. So, for example, in Johar al-Tawheed, Imam al-Bajuri talks about this, which is that the two names mentioned in this verse is call upon Allah or call upon Ar-Rahman. So meaning Al-Rahman is also close to a proper name. It's not the same as Allah, but it is close to a proper name in that it points towards the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Rather than, let's say, an action. So it points towards the essence itself. So it is an exalted name compared to the other names, and because it points towards the essence like the name Allah does. Now we have to describe what like mercy in essence is, right? So Imam Al-Ghazali describes it, and like these are direct quotations, so I only try to explain them. So both names are derived from mercy. So like mercy, rahma, requires an object of mercy, and no one is an object of mercy unless he be in need. One cannot be merciful unless the need is fulfilled with volition and intention and concern for the needy. So in order for a person to be merciful, what Imam Ghazali is arguing over here is that firstly, the person to whom the mercy is done must be needy. So if he's not needy, it's not really a mercy, right? And secondly, it must be done through pure free will. So if you're compelled to do something for an individual, you cannot say that, this is mercy. It's not. And so perfect mercy is pouring out benefaction for the one in need. Inclusive mercy is when it embraces both deserving and undeserving. Allah's mercy is perfect and inclusive, meaning it has both of these things. So it is pouring out benefaction for the one who is in need, and it embraces both deserving and undeserving people. Allah's mercy is perfect and inclusive. Perfect in the sense that it meets all those in need. Inclusive in the sense that it encompasses all in this world and in the next. Now, before we dive into, like, Imam Al-Ghazali talks about how anyone apart from Allah cannot be merciful. So it's impossible for anyone apart from Allah to be merciful. First, I think we will handle this first. So a human being is only merciful for three reasons. So the first reason a human being is merciful is because he wants to remove the feeling of the ache of the heart. So the feeling of pity. So I see a person who's suffering, and so I feel naturally, if I'm not a psychopath, I should feel some pity for the person. I should feel some compassion of the person. And if I do not help him, this feeling would call me some suffering or some ache or some sort of, let's say, discomfort. And so therefore I help that person in order to remove that feeling that I find within myself. Now this is the least of mercy because it is done to benefit oneself. The second reason that a person may help someone is because he expects something in return. So it's like, I scratch your back, you scratch my back. So I help you because I expect that in the future, when I need help, you will help me, right? So this is also not mercy, because it is not done for the individual, right? It is done for yourself. So because you're only helping him because you are anticipating some help in return in the future. So it is only done for that purpose. This is also not mercy. Now, the highest reason that a person can help someone is purely for the sake of God, meaning for a transcendental purpose, which is that he helps someone because he believes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward him, or he does it simply for the sake of God because Allah is merciful. Therefore, since he is the servant of God, he is merciful to other individuals. Right? This is the highest form of mercy. We do not believe that there is any other uh, act of mercy that let's say transcends these three categories. This is it. This is the only three reason why human beings can do an act of mercy. That's it. But all three of these do not deserve to be called mercy because it is not done for the sake of the one in need. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not expecting any favors from you. He already owns everything. You can't give him anything. He is completely and utterly free of any need. And so that reason can't apply to him. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have feelings. So he does not feel ache because you, let's say, suffer. That's not how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. So that reason does not apply to him. And he does not do it for the sake of himself, right? He does not do it for the sake of Allah. So that reason cannot apply to him either. He does not do it for the sake of some other principle either, right? So he does it purely for your sake. And so since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants you mercy purely for your sake, then he's the only one that can be called merciful. He's the only one that has perfect mercy. No one other can be described as the merciful, apart from in metaphor. So this is what Imam Al Ghazali holds, that everyone else apart from God is metaphorically merciful. They can't be in actuality merciful. And they can't be in actuality, let's say, merciful or good or infinitely good or the ever merciful, all of the different terms, however you want to translate the word. And so then comes the question of what's the difference, right, between Al Rahman and Al Rahim. So for Imam Al Ghazali, Al Rahman is more specific than Al Rahim, and the lessons that can be derived from both of them are different. And so he doesn't really dwell much on what's the difference between the two names. So some of the opinions of the scholars, they are varied opinions, but one of the main opinions is that Al Rahman is all encompassing, whereas Al Rahim is specific. So Ar Rahman encompasses everything. So Ar Rahman is, for example, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted you existence out of purely His mercy. Because you are non existence, right? So as we talked about previously, you are not existent by virtue of yourself, right? So you're existent by virtue that Allah brought you into existence from non existence, right? So therefore, this is a merciful act from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is an act that is granted to everything that exists without discrimination, either the believer, the unbeliever, the living, the dead, the angels, the humans, the beast, the seas, the rivers, the mountains, everything has been granted this favor by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and this mercy by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even the people in hellfire will be granted this mercy. So Allah will be merciful to them even while they are in hellfire, because He grants them existence by and does not ask for anything in return for that, right? And we believe from like a rational perspective that existence is better than non-existence, because non-existence can't be spoken about, it's nothing, right? So the only thing that can be predicated with goodness is existence, and so therefore existence is better than non-existence. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants you a mercy even if you be in hell by granting you existence. So He is merciful to everything in that sense, in the all-encompassing sense. And so the Ar-Rahim is said to be more specific to the believers. So those who follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands, those who do good, those who are on the path, let's say, of God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants them specific rewards, specific things, brings them closer to Himself. It showed me that you're offline or something. Can you guys hear me? Apparently, I went offline and now I am online. So wait, let me see. No, not yet. Okay, let's see. Can you wait? Where's the? Sorry for like disturbing the flow, but so it's is it fine now? It says I'm back online. Let me try the different internet. Let's see. Is it working? Or is there any lag, let's say? Come on, guys, let me know. Can you hear me properly? Is there any lag or not? Yep, it's fine. Okay, so let's bounce back into it. So now, the way that Imam Al Ghazali does describe Al Rahman is the infinitely good is he who loves men first by creating them, second by guiding them to faith and to means of salvation, and third by making them happy in this world, and fourth by granting them the contemplation of his noble face. So that's how Imam Al Ghazali goes on to describe Ar Rahman, right? And so now comes the share in the name. So how can we understand the name? How can we attain some of the meanings of the names ourselves? So in terms of Al Rahman, man's understanding of the name Al Rahman lies in his showing mercy to the negligent, dissuading them from heedlessness by exhortation and counseling by way of gentleness, not violence. Regarding the disobedient with eyes of mercy and not contempt, sparing no effort to eliminate disobedience to the extent that he can, all out mercy to the disobedient. So this is an act of a kind of act of altruism in the sense that man wants him to gain the favor of God, and so therefore what he does is that he becomes merciful to the negligent, dissuading him from heedlessness and sin and all of the things that are taking him away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, primarily sin, and also things that are discouraged, or let's say he's heedless, he's not remembering God enough, he's not dedicating his life to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he does this by mercy, by gentleness, by kindness, not by violence, and not by, let's say, disparaging the person. He does this purely as an act of mercy, because how can you, let's say, have a share in the name of, let's say, Al Rahman without being merciful yourself, right? So as the hadith goes, that if you are merciful, if you want to attain the mercy of he who is in heaven, then you show mercy to those who are on earth, right? So that is how you attain the mercy of Allah and attain some of the meanings of the name Al Rahman. And as we previously talked about in Imam Al Ghazali's definition of the word Al Rahman, he says that it is he who guides humanity, shows them, gives them rewards, and shows them his noble face, and all of these different things. So therefore, you guide a person to paradise in that sense, right? By removing all of, let's say, his issues. In terms of Al Rahim, his understanding of the name Al Rahim comes from not turning away from the needy by helping those in his neighborhood, either by wealth, reputation, intercession, or sincere prayer. So it is by an act of helping those that are around him, by showing them brotherhood, by showing them mercy, by helping him with whichever means he has, either it be his wealth, his reputation, his intercession, or all of the different ways that he can help an individual, right? By giving him a place in his house, by giving them food, by being nice to them, by being kind to them, by removing a hurdle on their path, and all of these different things. And so that way he can share in some of the meanings of the name Al Rahim. So now moving on to the problem of evil. So Imam Al Ghazali asks the question, or he says that if someone asks the question, that if he is the most merciful of all those who are merciful, why doesn't he stop every illness, every disaster, every pain, which is clearly in his ability to do so? So the question is that since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the ability to stop everything, and let's say quote unquote evil thing that occurs in the world, then why doesn't he do so? And if he doesn't do so, how can he be called the merciful? So the answer to this by Imam Al Ghazali is that there is no existence, no evil in existence that does not contain in it some good, and were the evil to be removed, the good would also be removed. Now, he offers some analogies in the book in order for you to understand this. And the analogy that he uses is that, let's say a person has an arm, and this arm is infected, it is diseased. Let's say it has cancer, it has tumor, whatsoever. Now, in order for a person's body to be saved, this arm must be amputated. Now, obviously, removing of a limb in like the in like let's say a conventional sense is an evil. It is something that you shouldn't do. It is bad, right? It's a blessing, so you should not remove the arm. But the good of removing the arm is that the body survives. And if this good of removing the arm was taken away, then the body as a whole would perish. Because if the arm is not removed, the body suffers. And so there is a good in this evil of removing the arm, and the evil that is done in the sense that the arm is removed, that is only accidental, whereas the good is that which is intended, which is saving of the body. Now, if the evil were to be removed, meaning the amputating of the arm were to be removed, then the good would fade with it, which is the surviving of the body. So like this is every single thing that we perceive as evil in the world, in the sense that if that evil in the world were removed, the good that comes with it would be further removed, and the good is always something that outweighs the evil in the things that we imagine. So that is Imam Al Ghazali's understanding of it, and he quotes the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that my mercy precedes my anger, meaning that it has tarjih. It is above my anger. So his anger here is him intending bad. So bad is by his intention, while his mercy is his intending good. So good is by his intention. He intended good for the good itself. Meaning, just as in the analogy we said that what is intended is to save the body, and the only thing that can save the body is the amputation of the arm. And so therefore the arm is cut off in order to achieve the aim, which is saving the body. It is only accidental in that sense, whereas the good is that which is intended for itself, which is the saving of the body. So he intended good for itself, yet intended evil not for itself, but because there is some good within it, then good is accomplished essentially, but evil is accidentally, and each according to divine decree. So nothing over here goes against mercy at all. And so if a person was to say that, let's say, there is no good in the evil that occurs in the world, then he's like the child who does not understand that the arm is being removed to save the body. So it is due to his ignorance. And another person who would say that, well, perhaps this issue could be solved without this evil, then he's similarly a child who does not understand that if this evil was not to be committed, then the good that is achieved from it would also be lost. So in both analogies, in both objections, it is the ignorance of the person that is to blame. It is not the mercy of God that is negated. That is how Imam Al Ghazali answers the, let's say, the problem of evil. Now, the way that the theologians have answered this is that they have denied that evil exists. So they have been pretty blunt about this. So they have denied that evil exists at all, because evil is, let's say, the absence of something, right? So evil does not exist, and the only thing that exists is good, in that sense. And even in good also, they argue that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beyond these human conceptions. So he is free to do whatever he pleases, and his mercy is simply granting existence, and his specific mercy is for the believers, as we talked about previously, how let's say the scholars have defined Rahman and Rahim. And so they also further go on to argue that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of everything. So for example, I own this hat, right? If I was to rip apart this hat, I was to throw it away, you would not say I'm unjust because I own it, right? I can do whatever the hell I want with it. And similarly, every single thing that exists is owned by Allah. Allah is the ultimate owner of every single thing, literally and metaphorically. So in every single sense, it is Allah that owns it. So I don't own this hat in reality, right? It is only given to me for a certain extent, and it can be taken away from me, right? So anyone can snatch this hat and just run away with it, whereas nothing can be taken from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He owns it completely and utterly, right? So our ownership of things is metaphorical, whereas Allah's ownership of something is actual. And if our ownership, which is metaphorical, entitles us to do with our possessions what we will, then how does the ownership of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is actual, does not entitle him to do whatever he wishes? So no matter what he does, since we are, let's say, his property, we are his possessions, he owns us completely. No matter what he does with us is just. It is impossible rationally for it to be unjust, right? So that is how, like, let's say, the theologian answers the problem of evil, just if you guys didn't understand. So this is more so, let's say, a spiritual answer rather than, let's say, a purely rational answer. So now we move on to the name Al-Malik. So the king is the one who, in his essence and attributes, has no need of existing things, while every existing thing needs him. There is nothing among things which can dispense with him concerning anything, whether in its essence or attributes or existence. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no need of anything whatsoever. Whereas man, he has need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every single thing imaginable. His survival, his food, his pleasure, his existence itself. So he only exists because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to grant him existence. As we talked about previously, that a man is not existent by virtue of his essence. So therefore, existence must be granted to him at every single moment of his life. And the moment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stops granting him is the moment that he returns to what he was, which is non-existence. So a man needs Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for every single thing that he can imagine, whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need him for anything that he can imagine. Allah is completely and utterly free of all need in any single thing, either his essence, his attributes, and any other thing that you can imagine, right? So therefore, he is the actual king. Now, it is not possible for a human being to be described with this attribute whatsoever. He can only be described with it metaphorically, same with the name Al Rahman and Al Rahim, because a man is never free of need. As we talked about, he is non existence in his essence. So he must be granted existence, and he must be granted it continually. So, how can he be free of need of that? And even after that, he is in need of food, he's in need of drink, he's in need of all of these different things in order to survive. So he's never free of that. And people cannot need him absolutely, right? So at maximum, people can need him for a few things, right? And so he can never be the king in the sense that he doesn't need anything, and he can never be in the king in the sense that everything needs him, right? So it is only metaphor for him. But he can have some share of the name, for a king among people is one whom no one rules but God, the Most High, and one and who does not need anything except Allah, great and glorious. And with that, he rules his kingdom insofar as his soldiers and his subjects obey him. Yet the kingdom proper to him is his heart and soul, where his soldiers are his appetite, his anger, and his affections, while his subjects are his tongue, the eyes, his hands, and the rest of his organs. So a man has a kingdom, and Imam Al Ghazali uses this analogy throughout his works. Badayatul Hidayah, Nasiyatul Maluk, Ihya Ulumuddin, and over here in Al Maqsad Al Asna, which is that a man has his subjects. So his subjects are his hand, his tongues, his eyes, his ears, and this is something that the Quran always mentions. So and the Ahadith always mentions. So for example, the Prophet ﷺ says that whoever can guarantee me his tongue and what is between his legs, meaning his private parts, his sexual desires, I will guarantee paradise for him. So it is that he can control them. He can control his tongue, and he can control his sexual urges, right? And similarly, the hand. So a Muslim is a person from whom other Muslims are safe, both from his tongue and from his hand, because the hand is a subject. So a Muslim does not does not go into places where he hears wrong. So Allah even has rights over your ears. You're not supposed to hear something that is wrong. So, for example, you are not supposed to curse, and you're not supposed to hear curses. You're not supposed to hear backbiting. You're not supposed to be in, let's say, in gatherings where all of these things are mentioned. So these are your subjects: your hand, your eyes, your ears, your private parts, right? And you must control them, and you must rule over them in accordance with the divine law. And this is your ruling over your subjects. Now, in terms of ruling his own kingdom and his own soldiers, so his soldiers refers to his inner self. So over here, Imam Al Ghazali mentions 3 faculties, but in reality, there are 4 faculties. As he mentions in rather than nafs, which is the faculty of anger, the faculty of knowledge or rationality, the faculty of appetite, and the faculty of what was the 4th one? Irascible, and the faculty of equilibrium, that which strikes a balance between them. And so this is his soldiers. So his anger is a soldier to him. He must control it, right? As the Prophet ﷺ said, that the strong is not a man who can beat another individual, but the strong is a man who can control his anger, right? And similarly, his other is his appetite. So his appetite refers to all of his base animalistic desires, such as sex, such as eating, such as drinking, such as backbiting, such as the desire to dominate, such as the desire to attain all of the things of the world, and all of these different desires, right? And so he needs to control them as well. So they need to obey him, and they only need to be used when they are needed, and they only need to strike when they are told. So anger is not, the task is not to do away with anger, because if you do away with anger, how can you defend that which needs to be defended? How can you speak against oppression? How can you chastise a person who deserves to be chastised? How can you fight in a war, right? So anger is a soldier that must be used when it is needed, and it is needed only in conformity with the divine law. So whenever Allah says that you must show it, you show it. And wherever he says you must not show it, you control the soldier, you put him in the barracks, and you do not let him out of the barracks, right? That's what you're supposed to do. And similarly with all of the other faculties. So that is a man attaining kingship, which is controlling himself. So that is how he can understand the name Malik better. And if he rules them and they do not rule him, and if they obey him and he does not obey them, he will attain the level of a king in this world. So that is the understanding that Imam Al Ghazali forwards of the name Al Malik, right? So we're going to move on to the last name that we will cover, which is the name Al Quddus, which means the holy, right? So it is the one who is free from every attribute a sense might perceive or imagination may conceive. He is free from what the mind thinks and what imagination instinctively may turn to, or what conscious may be moved. So we talked about this a bit earlier, which is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free from anything that you can imagine whatsoever. So it is irrelevant what you imagine. So whenever the name Allah is mentioned, whatever you imagine, Allah is not that. It's impossible for you to conceive him in any sense whatsoever. As we said, it is only Allah who knows himself. And this attribute, or this name, Al-Quddus, is the name that denotes that. He is free from anything that creation can imagine. He is free from having any similarity with them. He is free from having any correspondence with them. He is free from having anything to do with them in the sense that they share in what he is, right? He is completely and utterly holy. He is completely and utterly transcendent over every single thing imaginable and over every single abstraction that you can derive. That is what it means to be the holy. Now, man can have a better understanding of this name by freeing his knowledge and will. So knowledge, in terms of knowledge, it means that he must free his knowledge from tangible, fanciful, and imagined things, and from all perceptions he shares with animals. Rather, he must be refreshed by knowledge that is eternal, universal, and divine, concerned with eternal and everlasting objects of knowledge and not changeable individuals. So a person, in order to free his knowledge, and in order to gain some understanding of the name Al-Quddus, what he has to do is that he has to throw away his beastly desires. So his beastly desires are the opposite. They are the lowliest of the low, right? So they are tangible, and they control him, and they are bound by space and time, as we talked about previously, right? So as long as he is ruled by them, as long as he indulges in them, that he is an individual that has no share whatsoever in knowledge of the name Al-Quddus. So he must free themselves. He must free himself from their reign over him. And the way that he does this is by contemplating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the sense by contemplating his names, contemplating his creation, contemplating the realities that are beyond this realm. So which refers to the metaphysical realities, such as the angels, such as all of these different things. Imam Al Ghazali goes on to talk about the mystical realities, and we will leave them for that conversation, right, in Arba'in fi Usuluddin. Now, in terms of will, one must free himself from the desires and rid himself from being a slave to the desires of the body, like the animals are. So this is for an individual to completely and utterly transcend the desires of the body by trying to be like the angels as much as possible, as the angels are not moved by anything apart from their desire to gain proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and their desire to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and their desire to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is what a man is supposed to do. And if he does that, then he is free in his will, right? So he is free in his will from all of the worldly distractions. So these are the 5 names that we will cover today, and inshallah in the next one we will cover more of the names, but these are the 5 names that we have covered today. And in the next one, we will be covering obviously Arba'in fi Usuluddin. And since we have covered the 5 names, so we will be going through Imam Al Ghazali's first chapter of, let's say, knowledge, and then we will move on and progress. We will see. I will see by making, let's say, a summary of it, if we can tackle, let's say, one of the acts of worship, so either wudu, either charity, either salah, and if we can tackle that, then we will. Otherwise, we will just go through, let's say, basic introductions of Arba'in fi Usuluddin and its first chapter. So that is inshallah what we will do. And until then, let me know if you guys have any questions, and we can answer the questions, and then inshallah end this and see you next week. So do go ahead. So there are no questions. It seems as though I explained it perfectly. None of you guys have any questions. Let's see. No questions at all, guys. I'm gonna wait. Let's say 30 seconds if you guys have any questions. Otherwise, we're gonna we're gonna end this, inshallah. If anything you guys didn't understand and you have any questions regarding some of the names we've covered, any questions regarding the book, inshallah you can ask it, and we can cover that. Otherwise, we will be closing this down, and what you can do is that you can rewatch it if you guys missed it, right? It doesn't seem like you guys have any questions, new comments. Let's see. I used to go through some of the names every day during Ramadan. Will you do this in Ramadan? So, inshallah ta'ala, we can go through them again, or maybe go through some of the names in Ramadan. What we can do actually instead is that we can go through some of the adhkar that Imam Al Ghazali recommends for Ramadan. But yeah, I think that would be better. So what we can do is that we can talk about some of the adhkar. We can talk about some of the dhikr that Imam Al Ghazali used to do and he recommends. So he has a entire chapter on this in both Ihya Ulumuddin and in Arba'in fi Usuluddin. What I've covered previously in Ramadan is I've covered Riyadat al-Nafs, so on disciplining the soul. So I've covered this twice in the previous Ramadans. And I've also covered Arba'in fi Usuluddin in Ramadan, because I think in terms of Ramadan, it is important to have a hold over your desires, because Ramadan is a very blessed month, and if you can gain control over your desires in Ramadan, you would have a blessed Ramadan, right? So that is what we can also do. But in terms of the name, I think we should be, if we are doing 5 names per session, so it would take us I believe 20 sessions in order for us to do it, which would be 40 weeks. So we probably would be doing this by the time Ramadan comes around. So we would probably be talking about the names when Ramadan comes out anyway, but we can do some special classes in Ramadan as well, inshallah. Aren't we saying that a child is more angel than, no, the child is not more angel like than an adult, because the child is ruled by desires. So a child is ruled by the desire to eat. That is the primary desire that he has, his appetite. So this is why a child, what he does is that he tries to put everything in his mouth. What a child does is that he puts his food all over his body. He dirties his face, he dirties his clothes. He runs after the slight pleasure of food. And so he's completely ruled by a desire, a child is. So a child is the closest a human being gets to being beastly. Because even if you're an evil human being, by the time that you have reached the age of discrimination, you've already understood what discrimination is, and then later on you understand what reason is. And so you have transcended the child in a sense. So the child is the closest thing that we will ever be to a beast, because a child is completely and utterly ruled by desires, right? He's not accountable, so it's not a sin upon him, but he is ruled by desires. And the first desire that occurs in a human being is the desire to eat. Oh yeah, sure. So the translation that I am using, and the one that I recommend, is this one. So this is by David B. Burrell and Nazir Daher. So this is the translation I'm using, and like sometimes it does have a couple of issues, the translation. So and I will point it out when that arises, right? So it has a couple of issues. It has translated some of the Arabic words wrongly, but overall it's a very good translation. And so if when we reach the point of those names in which it has, let's say, it has done some inaccuracies in its translations, I will point it out, inshallah. In terms of like a child and an angel, so in terms of these questions, so Imam Al Ghazali talks about this in Bidayatul Hidayah. So what he gives is the, let's say, a progression of desires. So the first desire that begins in human beings is the desire to eat. The second desire that begins is the desire to have sexual intimacy, and this occurs whenever a human being reaches puberty. And then after, the third desire to develop in a human being is the desire of money. So he wants to accumulate wealth. And this is a desire from Imam Al Ghazali's view that happens after he has gone through his teens, so when he becomes a proper adult. So this is when the desire of money begins in him, and he chases after it. And every desire is stronger than the previous one. So the desire of eating is lesser than the desire of sexual intimacy, and the desire to have worldly gains is a desire that is stronger and more intense than the desire of sexual intimacy. And then the desire of dominion comes when the man reaches approximately the age of 40. And this is the most intense of all the desires. So it is the desire of leaving behind a name, it is a desire of glory, it is a desire of making an impact, so to speak. And this is why you would see that most of the corrupt individuals and most of the people in power are the old elderly people, because this is the desire that is the most intensified in them, which is a desire to dominate others, which is a desire to have dominion. And this is actually, Imam Al Ghazali says that this is a desire to attain rububiyyah, which is lordship. So he tries to compete with God, and this is what Pharaoh did, for example, right? He was trying to compete with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because the desire of dominion was so intense in him. And so this is the last desire that human beings develop, which is after the age of 40, the desire of dominion. And it is the strongest of those old desires. And so, but this desire also is better than the previous three desires, because the desire of eating was the bare minimum, right? So it's just you eating. And then came the desire of sexual intimacy. So now this desire, is the way that it progresses is that the first desire only relates to you. The second desire relates to you and another individual. The third desire relates to things that are other than you. The fourth desire relates to non-things. So glory is not a thing, dominion is not a thing, right? So it relates to something that is other than a physical thing. And so the desires do, let's say, progressively turn more illuminating. And so when the last desire comes, a man is supposed to realize that his only dominion is in being an abd of Allah. And so this is why the saying, I don't know if it's sahih or not, but the saying exists that a man who has not, by the age of 40, taken hold of his desires, then he should get ready for hellfire. So any other questions, guys? Or we can, inshallah, stop this. Can we get a bit of a summary about the differences between the Ash'ari and the Maturidiyya? So what I've done is that I've done a documentary both on Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, and I've done a documentary on Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. So what you can do is that you can go through them and see like the differences between the imams. So I've not really tackled the differences. There's a good video on this by Sheikh Shams Tamiz on the Kharabadi Institute. And so it's the video of the it's a video, I think it's just titled the Maturidiyya, and in it he goes through the differences between schools. So the Ash'ari and Maturidiyya do not really have a lot of differences. I think some of the ulama limited them to 7, and I believe from those 7, like half are semantical. So the main differences are on morality, and even on morality it's a very small difference. And then the second difference is on will. So for example, so how do you reconcile predestination with free will? That's the second difference. The third difference is on what faith is. So that's largely a difference between the Shafis and the Hanafis rather than between the Ashaira and the Maturidiya. But that is what the difference is. The fourth difference is, I believe, on something relating to prophethood. And in that, actually, the modern Maturidis, all of them follow the Ashari position because it's just stronger. And even in the later period, they are not no pure Maturidis anymore. So because the later period is a period of synthesis. And in a period of synthesis, most of the scholars, even though they are Maturidi broadly, they have Ashari opinions. So if you take, for example, Ahmed Raza Khan Brelvi, he has many Ashari opinions. If you take Mustafa Sabri, even though he's a Maturidi, he has many Ashari opinions. And if you take someone like Fazl Haq Khairabadi, he has many Ashari opinions, because it's a period after synthesis, and therefore there is no such thing as a pure Maturidi anymore, apart from maybe some of the scholars in Central Asia. But you still have pure Asharis in North Africa, because the Ashara are just a bigger school, right? And you also have many of the Hanafis of Syria who are Ashari. So yeah, but there isn't a lot of difference. So Imam Subki actually believed that there is no difference. So Imam Subki held the view that all of the differences are semantical. I don't hold that view. I do think there are some real differences, and that are not semantical. But some of the ulama even said that there is no difference at all. From Imam al-Razi, there you can probably find some articles online, like Mutalib al-Ali and stuff like that. And I believe that from his Tafsir al-Kabir, his commentary on the Fatiha is translated. Yes, his commentary on the Fatiha is translated. Apart from that, I don't believe anything is translated from Tafsir al-Kabir. It is translated, I believe, in Urdu, if I'm not sure. So I believe so. But yeah, that's the extent of Imam al-Razi's works in English or in So any questions, guys? Or we can inshallah close this down and see you guys next week. Like, one of the things that you were 180 people in the group, only 5 of you are online, right? What a disappointment. And this is what usually occurs. Like, everyone says they want to be part of a reading group, but when the reading starts, like 90% of them are nowhere to be found. But that's fine. Inshallah, we can hopefully more of you can join in the next session. And by the way, my documentary on Imam Abu Hamid Al Ghazali is about to drop next week. So I'm done with the recording and the animations. The only thing that remains is like editing, and I'm working with a brother to like bring you some 3D animations. So yeah, that remains. Probably should be done in a week. And the only reason it wasn't done sooner is because I was way too busy. Yeah. And so if there are no more questions, then I would be taking my leave, inshallah. Like, there was a brother who asked, do you believe in divine conceptualism? But I don't believe he's in the chat. He asked it like an hour ago, so I will not entertain it unless he is here. If he is here, I will entertain it. Okay, doesn't seem like he is here. Okay, guys, so I believe that is all for now. Inshallah ta'ala, next week we start with Arba'in fi Usuddin. I will see how much of it we can actually cover. It doesn't require as big of an introduction as Al-Maqsad Al-Asna, and we can cover pretty much everything from it. There is nothing that is too complex, and if it is, I will try to simplify it. And that's the best I can do. And after Armayan, we can go to like something like Riyadat al-Nafs, Nasiyatul Muluk, stuff like that. But that is all that I have for you today. Inshallah ta'ala, until next time, take care of yourselves, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.